Hey everybody, welcome back. Guys, I thought tonight would be a really good night to do a one beer chat because my family's asleep. The weather is absolute garbage outside right now. We've got a big ice storm rolling through. Hopefully my power stays on. And I wanted to do this video just because I've been noticing you guys have been watching a lot of the Red Osier Dogwood videos lately, which I greatly appreciate. So I just kind of want to go over probably a little bit of what's in there, and maybe talk even a little bit more about it, but then kind of just give you guys my plan and where I've seen success, and that has been in kind of a random spot, and where I've also failed. Just so I know habitat season's coming up. I know Red Osier Dogwood, the time to take cuttings, plant cuttings, that's all coming up really fast. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I got my beer. Hopefully you guys do too if you're watching this in the evening. If you're not, if you got a coffee, if you got a pop, if you got a tea, water, whatever it is, cheers, you guys, to another one beer chat. So Red Osier Dogwood, I started doing that. I started planting cuttings a couple years ago because I have a lot of Red Osier Dogwood in my swamp. In my property, if you guys don't know, it's very swampy. I have 21 acres. I have probably like 7 to 8ish acres that I primarily hunt. That is, I mean, it's wet, but it's more timber. It's more just kind of like muddy, wet timber, and then in an L shape surrounding that is a lot of cattail marsh, and there's a lot of red osier dogwood growing in it. And I saw obviously how deer like to browse it. I watched videos similar to what you guys have done on red osier dogwood, on its benefits, how easy it is to propagate via cuttings, and so I just started doing it. The first time I did it, I just went out, I went gangbusters, and I just took a bunch of cuttings because it's easy. And my plan, at least initially, was I'm gonna find an area that is kind of wet, that's just kind of void of stuff in that 8 acre ish main section that I hunt. And I'm going to try to get some of this in an area where I can utilize it for hunting. And so I kind of just went with the broad stroke method of let's just get as much down in the ground as I can, knowing that not all of this stuff is going to take. And if I get, I mean, gosh, I don't know, 20 to 30%, let's just say, maybe 50 if I'm lucky, this is going to be a dynamite late season area to, not only provide deer browse, but to offer me some late season hunting opportunities. And that's what I did. I just took cuttings, I stuck them in the ground in, I think most of what I've done has been like late March, early April, when it's thawed, and weather's kind of halfway nice. I can go out and take cuttings and stuff. But I basically just stuck stuff in the ground. I don't want to say it didn't work, but right now, what that area looks like right now, there's very little red osier dogwood. So when I checked back on that area in a little later in the spring, there was definitely stuff that was, buds above the ground. They were leafing out. Um, and I thought it was promising. Come to find out, especially in areas where I had planted some, um, like more in my food plot, or close to it, not the big broad stroke area, but like a couple other little sections, the deer browse that stuff almost right away. Some of those new leaves, all those, cuttings sticking in the ground, they got browsed pretty much instantly. And that really, at least I think, it killed them. I mean, as that cutting is trying to establish roots, as it's leafing out, is trying to become an actual red osier dogwood bush, they hit it, and then they were dead. So that whole area where I focused on that broad stroke, it's pretty much void of red osier dogwood. Some of these other videos that you guys have been watching, or if you haven't, I'll put links down below in the description. I had this pallet back at in my backyard, basically, right on the other side of my fence, so kind of where like my backyard ends and my woods and swamp starts. And just in this random pallet I kind of had just sitting back there, a red osier dogwood started growing, and it was really small. It was growing up right through the slats of the pallet. And over the last few years, I've just watched it, and I've watched how fast it's grown. I mean, it has grown really fast. I mean, now it's probably 6 feet tall. It's a big bush. I'm actually going to take cuttings off of it this year. Um, and I just was kind of looking at it, and I'm looking at the area that it's in. And that's honestly where I've probably learned the most about Red Osier Dogwood, was just this random one that started growing there. And what I learned, and what you guys probably saw in one of those other videos, is one, having something, it seems like, to just kind of be like a weed barrier or like a grass barrier, I think exponentially helps the Red Osier Dogwood. So however this got there, it's probably a bird pooped out a seed right there. Having that pallet down where that area does kind of get weedy and tall grass and stuff, just having that mash down grass or not let grass grow up gave that little dogwood seed a chance to grow. And as it has continued to just stay there and protect it from grass and weeds, it's grown up a bunch. Another thing that I noticed was it's really close to my fence, and I now have also dogwood growing right along my fence. So birds having some spots to perch, and just by eating berries and having a place to perch and poop out seeds, like that whole area now of my backyard, fast forward to now, a couple years, 2 or 3 years from when I first saw the one growing through the pallet, it it has more dogwood around it, and it never did before, than all the stuff that I have physically planted cuttings. So when I looked at that, I thought, okay, here's another thing, another strategy that I can do, and that is, in some of these areas that are swampy, and maybe you want to just get more dogwood, or bring dogwood kind of closer to like the transition line of a woods and swamp, having areas where birds can poop, man, or I should say like perch, spend time, and hopefully poop. Um, that actually helps a bunch. So one thing I had done, I hinge cut some trees in my swamp close to some of this dogwood. I didn't plant any cuttings in it, and lo and behold, now when I walk back there, there's red osier dogwood growing up through all those, like the treetops and stuff. So not only was that kind of like, again, something to just mash down all the cattails and swamp grass and just all the stuff that grows up, but again, I think just an area where a bird had spent some time, had perched, a place where there's normally not something horizontal for them to land on, being just a big cattail marsh, it it is producing red osier dogwood. So my plan, having learned that, having done the broad stroke method of taking a bunch of cuttings, just going gangbusters, planting them everywhere, and not really having success, to just what I've seen kind of nature do with not very much planning on my end. My plan now for this year is I'm going to go a little more like a fine tooth comb. Um, I'm going to take cuttings off of that one on the pallet because it's big enough. It can definitely handle it, and I might as well use it. It's super easy for me to take them, get them back there, and do it. But I am going to utilize pallets as kind of weed barriers, and I'm also going to do it where, at least what I'm envisioning, is that pallet, also kind of being the cage for my cuttings. I might not take whole pallets. I might like skill saw them up, maybe use some other ones to kind of make just kind of mini pallets. I don't need a whole big one, and I've got to take it through my flooded timber, back through my woods. Like everything I take back there, I got to be able to carry it, and carrying whole pallets where I want this stuff to grow will suck. So we're going to probably cut pallets up. We're going to just mash them down, and then put cuttings in the pallets in between the slats. And I'll probably put a couple, just so if one doesn't take, you've got a couple extras there. And then I'm going to build like a cage using the pallet as like the base, maybe just some cheap, wood slats coming up, some chicken wire, that kind of stuff, just keep birds, keep the not keep the birds, sorry, keep the deer, keep the rabbits off of it, and give those cuttings a chance to take. Give them a chance to get established, get a root system going, and hopefully turn into, what all of us want, a nice flourishing red osier dogwood bush that bears has berries, has browse for the deer in the winter, all that stuff. And I'm going to strategically place those in some areas. And I don't know if I'm going to do a ton, but I really think just with how fast this one in my backyard has grown, um, I think that's I think that's the ticket, at least for me. So I'm going to do that. I'm also probably going to, I don't know if it's going to be fence. Um, it might be just some strands of like baling wire or something back close to my swamp, but also close to the transition area where literally I can set it up so I'm not impeding any deer movement. I'm not, like they might not even see it, but just again, something horizontal in an area that really doesn't have a lot of that some of these birds can perch on, that's close to already naturally standing red osier dogwood. Hopefully get them to literally eat berries, fly over here, hang out for a little bit, poop seeds out, and have another, section growing. This would be more of the like, I don't know what you would want to call it, kind of hope and pray, but like minimal. I mean, that is like minimal effort. And if it works, awesome, because it literally is working. I'm going to have to trim and I guess take cuttings on the ones that are growing along my fence, because they're starting to kind of get tangled up in the fence. So, and I guess just to let you guys know, the area where the stuff is actually growing is complete garbage soil. I'm very surprised that this stuff is actually growing there because it's not that wet. It's right where my gravel driveway going down to my pole barn has a fence that then kind of goes, and it's a little bit of a ways before it's like really wet where you would expect this stuff to grow, where you would expect red osier dogwood to grow. It's basically gravel. It's basically non-maintained gravel. It's hard. It's rocky. It sucks. Like it took me forever to drive T-post through it, but red osier dogwood is legitimately growing there. Um, I guess just having it be up by my backyard, where because I have flooded timber, deer aren't hitting it that much. I did look and I did see that it was browsed. We have had quite a bit of cold weather recently, or I guess a couple weeks ago. I shouldn't say like too recently, but deer were coming up in the backyard. They could walk through the flooded timber. They were hungry. They did browse quite a bit of that, but it doesn't. It at least being up by my house, it had a chance to establish. So if I had tips for you guys, um, it would be maybe do a little bit of both. Do a little bit of both. Find a section where you're like, okay, I'm going to try this as a broad stroke. I'm going to take cuttings and I'm just going to put them out. I'm going to see what happens. It might fail, and I guess know that, but I wouldn't put your whole bank into that broad stroke, because that's what I did at first, and obviously it didn't work. Then take some time and protect some. Put them in spots where you want them, but do everything you can, you know, to just have something that's kind of like a weed barrier. You don't have to use pal, you can use whatever you want, but I really think, having something where that grass isn't going to grow up and kind of just drown it out, I think that's really going to help. Cage it however you want to cage it. Maybe even cage like a, yeah, one thing I thought of, which I don't know if I'll do or not, but was literally fencing off like a big section, like taking a woven wire fence and T-posts and fencing off a big section, and putting a bunch of dogwood in and leave that for however long, couple years, and then remove the fence and do it in another section. I just think something to keep both the deer and the rabbits from browsing on it, I think is going to be key. So maybe try a little bit of both if you've never done it. Broad stroke and some more like surgical, deliberate implementations of red osier dogwood where you protect it, and really, you guys, once it's established, once it gets big, I mean, I would say 2 to 3 years, I probably could have taken cuttings off of that last year, and that just wasn't something that I had that much time to do. I was doing some other habitat stuff, but man, once that stuff gets going, it does not take long to get big enough to then utilize and continue to propagate via cuttings. Another thing, and I'm really bummed that this channel is no longer here, but I referenced it in one of my other videos that I think it was 80s Nursery. He had a fantastic video on just some of the more like finer details of taking cuttings, of prepping cuttings before you plant them. And it doesn't look like his channel's there anymore. But from what I gathered from it is I would take the time to, at a minimum, score the bottom of it. So that is something that I didn't do in my broad stroke planting a whole bunch of them. I just took cuttings and I had kind of snipped the ends of them at an angle and just made sure I had enough depth where some buds were below the soil, but I didn't score anything. I really think that just to promote that root growth, I think that is key. You can use rooting hormone if you want, but from what like at least what I've gathered, not only from that channel but from some other stuff, it's a nice to have. It's not a need to have. So if you want to go all in, as many fine details as you can to make sure that stuff takes, then maybe get some rooting hormone. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. It will help, but it doesn't seem quite as necessary as the protecting it from deer, from basically protecting it from browse, protecting it or keeping it from getting overrun with grass, weeds, all that kind of stuff, just giving it a chance to get sunlight to grow. And then I would say the third thing would be scoring the bottom of it and just giving that cutting, something a little extra than just cutting it to help promote that root growth. And then kind of the bonus is some of those things that you can do in areas that already have it, where you're not physically planting cuttings, but you're giving birds perching opportunities to just naturally propagate it the way that it does. It propagates by birds eating berries and pooping them out, or other things eating berries and pooping them out. But that's really it. So I know birds are a big one. That's the only way this stuff could have got up here in my backyard. And I think that those are easy opportunities. If you've already got it and you want to just kind of make more, you guys can find areas, whether it's fence, whether it's, if you want to use a rope, but that might look a little gaudy in your woods, hinge cutting trees, or maybe even just suspending branches that are horizontal in areas where there's not a lot of opportunities to do that. I think all of those things, they're not difficult. They have intent, like there are reasons why you're doing it. And really, I think just experiment with it. If you guys if you don't have Red Osier Dogwood growing naturally, obviously you can find places to buy it, but I would drive around. Try to find just some swampy areas. Like right now, late February here, before things green up, you can see Red Osier Dogwood really, really easy in swamps, on the edges of creek banks, whatever it is. Just take a day, drive around, or put boots on the ground, and see if you can find some. If you find some on public land, call your local DNR and just ask, like, hey, can I take some cuttings from this? They might say no, but at least you tried, and you maybe scouted some other stuff. But you might be surprised too if you knock on some doors. If you see some on private land, just ask them. Just say, hey, I am trying to establish some Red Osier Dogwood on my property for wildlife. I don't know if you know this, but you can take cuttings from Red Osier Dogwood. It's not going to kill the mature Red Osier Dogwood plant, but those cuttings I can stick in the ground and I can establish new plants. Would you be okay if I took a few cuttings from what I see over here on your creek bank, or what I see over here on your swamp, whatever? I think if you lay that out, you'd be surprised. You should be able to find some for free. So that's kind of what I got for you guys. At least that's my plan. That's what I've learned. And I think if you take some of those same approaches and try some stuff, don't be afraid to try some stuff. And I know it's a lot easier to try stuff if it's free. So try to find free Red Osier Dogwood. Try the broad stroke. Try some more detailed things. But I really think, at least with what I've learned and what my plan is, and I'll update you guys, if slash when I do this, how it turns out. I'll keep you guys posted. But I think kind of a combo of those things and just having some detail in some spots, I think it's really going to pay off for you guys because obviously I failed and I don't want you guys to fail too. I don't want you to waste your time. I want you guys to have great hunting properties and establish Red Osier Dogwood where you want it. So hopefully this helps you guys out. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you enjoy the other ones. And I know some of them are old, but I'm learning just like you guys are learning. So I just want to share with you guys what I've learned, why I'm going to do the things that I'm going to do, this year and the years forward. And we'll see what happens together. So please let me know if you guys do some Red Osier Dogwood plantings this year. I always like hearing from you guys. I always like learning from what other people are doing, success or failure. So please let me know. You guys can shoot me an email, draggindeer@gmail.com, post comments on this video, and good luck out there. Habitat season is right around the corner. I hope you guys have a great habitat season. I hope you're excited for it because it's one of my favorite times too. So thank you guys for joining me for another One Beer Chat. We'll see you guys again soon. Remember, be a sportsman, make a sportsman.